Hello and welcome to a fast, quick fire episode on the Bearfoot Miniatures channel. It's going to be released in minutes of me having recorded this because the Old World FAQ version 1.1 has dropped today and it has clarified a bunch of things that we needed and some things that are just good to know. Now, we're not going to be going over the legacy stuff because it's just largely changes to spell casting values being different in text versus the actual casting value column. But we are going to be going over the Forces of Fantasy, Ravening Hordes, as well as the main FAQ. Now, this is a quickfire one as well because it's dropped today and I'm already releasing another Old World episode tomorrow. It's basically just going to have to fit in as easily as possible. So on this first page here, we get the first change, which is a page 1.101 combat result bonus, change close order, because this is in the errata section, to only trigger on unit strength 5 or more to claim the +1 bonus result. Now, I'd swear there was already that you had to have multiple models in the unit to get the close order bonus. It might have just been that I'm remembering from it being referenced within the lumbering rule that chariots and behemoths had, and then applying it in retrospect back to normal close order units. But it's nice to have it clarified here. Now, notably, it's unit strength and not number of models, so cavalry units with 3 models or more will gain that close order bonus. So it's a nice little clarification there. We get heavy casualties being triggered on number of models rather than unit strength. That's just a change. It's neither here nor there to me. Like, I know you can join characters to units that are different unit strengths, but I suppose it makes it a bit easier to work out as a snap thing, but it's a change. The next, chariot runners, evasive, fire and flee, and reserve move, swift stride, all have to have the majority of models in the unit to actually use those special rules. Random movement has been a bit of a contentious one. Now, here, combined with further down in this FAQ, we get random movement having to be roll the dice, determine its maximum movement, and then added into the charging section, you've got that it's got to make a legal charge to be able to get in. You can't go round things with your random movement charge. You can't do a big circle to get into the rear or side. You've got to go directly and follow the normal rules for charging, which I think is a positive change rather than having them like Squig Hoppers roll 18 and run round the back of a unit to get a rear charge really easily. Berserker Blade, we've got the wielder actually becomes frenzied, and this is a constant effect because it's a magic item. So a bit of a clarification and boost to the Berserker Blade. I don't tend to take it, so it's not a big one for me. If you tend to take it, how do you get around your unit just running everywhere other than plonking another unit in front of them just for that one model with the Berserker Blade? And it's just the wielder of the Berserker Blade having that frenzy. We've got Bedazzling Helm, limited to models of infantry and cavalry only, when previously Chaos Lords could be rocking about in the Bedazzling Helm, and it's just a nice little limit to tone it down a little bit. Dragon Hammer meta doesn't need any more help, and this is a little bit of an errata to just rein that in a little bit rather than having these mega lords that you just have no hope of killing, but you've got to be playing really hard to take them down against a list that is written. Now, onto the general principles. Play fair is the first one, or play and let people take back their unit. I'd suggest marking it out of where your unit starts moving from. I put dice at the 2 back corners, so then we know exactly where that unit started moving from, and then it's just a nice little sportsman change. Frequently asked question there. We've got, again, this close order coming into it. Now, this is clarifying, does a close order model that's just one model, does it still act in close order formation, or does it act like a skirmisher? And that might have come from 6th edition fantasy, where if you were the last model in a unit, you then started acting like a skirmisher, could go in any direction, and it always acts like a close order unit. So you're going to have to be wheeling that single model, which is fairly hilarious. But it's just a clarification. Does a unit count as being obscured when some of the models within the unit are behind others? No. Who was asking this? Who was asking this? That's an absolute crazy change for this one. Or I say change, frequently asked question. If a model has a magic item, or wizard has a magic item, that allows them to re-roll the failed casting attempt, can they re-roll a double one on miscast? No. A roll of double one isn't merely a failed casting roll. It's a miscast, as said on page 109. Now, if we go to page 109, we've got the piece of text that doesn't imply that you can't do that. So this is a bit of an errata, but is it a positive, negative one? It's a bit of a negative for high elves, because you could just re-roll the dice as a base rule for high elf wizards. I quite like it as a rule. You're stuck into it. Yeah, is what it is. Can a wizard with physical attributes that counts as a type of armour, such as Treeman Ancients, Arboreal Armour, make a casting or dispel rolls? Yes, they can, because they're protective, as if a suit of armour. They don't actually wear armour. Now, nice to see it clarified. Movement. Can a unit that rallies and reforms during a rally fleeing unit subphase move during the movement phase? Yes. Now, this is just an FAQ. It's actually in there already, and it means everything acts as fast cavalry and continue to stay in the game. I think it's been a positive change this edition. Nice to see it clarified. Can a unit move while locked in combat? Now, it's one that crops up in a couple of games. Like, I know Heresy has Death Guard always being able to move and counting as stationary. One of the, I think, a Warlord trait or the Legion rule. And it's funny that this needs to be added in there for the old world as well, because it, like, to sort of veteran players, you just know, or players that aren't looking for loopholes, you just know that they can. But it's good that it's in there. Now, we next get on to, does a unit that has to declare a charge due to being frenzied or impetuous have to do so if a unit of skirmishers lies between it? If there is a chance of the skirmishers moving so that they are no longer an obstruction, yes. Otherwise, no. So it maybe is a bit oddly worded. It means essentially like you can't block a unit with another unit if that unit can still see. So because you could declare it, there is a chance of you declaring that charge, is how I read this. So we're just going through the Wood Elf guide, right? If your Wild Riders are behind a Glade Riders unit, that Glade Rider unit will have to charge to get out of the way to release the Wild Riders. Otherwise, they're just going to declare a charge and fail charge into the back of those Glade Riders or whatever unit is currently blocking them, rather than it actually forcing the Glade Riders to charge, which I think I just implied. And it prevents one of the sort of abuses, game things of Frenzy, where Frenzy wouldn't take effect until you wanted it to. I don't see it as a negative change, though. Arguably, Frenzy already has a big enough downside that you have to do that all the time. So, positive change here. Now, next, we come into like the real meat of this talk, which is essentially marching columns. Can you declare a charge? Why is this? It's basically to allow for the drilled rule, which will allow units in marching columns to declare a charge, and that's actually laid out in this question and the next question. And this is the change of the FAQ. I think it's a real positive change. I like it. It gives drilled a place, because otherwise, if I could just use drilled to come back into the column and in and out, and not be able to charge by using drilled, it means that I might as well have just marched for 2 turns rather than ever go into that marching column to get the triple movement. So it's a real positive change. I think it's good because this was like, we were all going crazy right at one point when the rules first came out over what happened with this, and it just lays it out. And good that it's actually in there and actually quite fast after the game's release. What are we? Now, actually, on the drilled section, we've got further down, can a unit redress the ranks before giving ground? Yes, a unit that gives ground is not a fleeing unit. So, as mentioned previously, should any part of the unit cross the table edge whilst giving ground, the entire unit is removed, and a benefit of drill is to avoid this fate. So, it's essentially the drilled rule is allowing you to change that formation and redress the ranks before any move that isn't fleeing. So you can do it on a pursuit, you can do it on a give ground because you're not fleeing, but for Bygo you won't be able to because you fall back and then rally. It's a real big change for drilled. It comes into more situations than I think any of us thought. When we was like sort of talking on the internet, when we were all talking on the internet about like, oh, does it come in just before charging? No, it's literally any time you pick up and move that unit, it will allow you to redress the ranks. So potentially triggering multiple times in the same turn to massively expand or expand and then contract again your unit shape, which is a real big benefit. Is a slight buff to Empire even, I would say, because I know lots of armies have drilled, but Empire seem to have the most access to drilled out of any army, potentially. So next we'll go back up to, can you charge a unit such as a large target that's already fully engaged in its front rank and blocked off because it's engaged? Answer, no, sometimes you can't do that. You can't charge. And it's not possible, even though you can see the target. And it's just a clarification, because you would still be in the front rank. You don't get a benefit for already having blocked off that charge. Because otherwise, I suppose it would come into it that you would declare 2 charges, fully block off the unit with 1 charge, just so that you could get round into the flank with the other. Some chariots are equipped with large-scale missile weapons, such as bolt throwers. Who shoots such weapons? The crews, the beasts, or the chariot itself? Missile weapons mounted on chariots are shot by the crew using their ballistic skill. So this is actually the first one that pops to my mind, is Dark Elf chariots aren't fired by characters, they're fired by the crew. So Beastmasters can't fire the harpoon launchers on the chariot, so back down to BS4 for them. Not that I think BS6 it is with the Beastmaster. A definite nerf to chariot heavy weapon crews, but it is what it is. I don't think Dark Elves are doing too badly at the moment from what I've seen in my experience, so it's just a thing, right? We've got clarification on how you direct impact hits in challenges here. It's directed against the other participant of the challenge, so if a chariot has charged into you, be very cautious of issuing that challenge, because you were going to get mullered by a bunch of impact hits potentially. And they're auto-hitting, remember. Now, chariots can allocate their attacks, their impact hits anyway, because they just allocated as normal. So be wary when standing on the front rank. If one participant of the challenge is killed, can other models engaged in the same combat basically place their attacks into that challenge at the survivor when it's their turn to fight at a lower initiative step, I imagine they mean. No, you can't. The challenge lasts until the end of the round of combat. Does the Armorbane X special rule apply to spells cast by a model with the rule, such as assailment spells, magic missiles, or vortexes? No, it doesn't. So no stacking Armorbane and then casting, I don't know, Spectral Doppelganger, right? And getting that to proc multiple times. It's a change. You can still Giant Blade someone to death with Spectral Doppelganger with that. We've then got this drill change again, cropping up. I think this is definitely the FAQ of drilled, where it just all gets like completely clarified. Do effects of the model's movement characteristic get modified, such as the Fly X special rule? Yes, so you can affect, say with Demonic Vigor, which alters movement values with a +1, you can affect Fly X with that. So if I'm flying 9, I can now go to flying 10 with Demonic Vigor, I think it is. Don't quote me on that spell though. It's in the demonology lore. It's Vigor or Vessel. I can't remember which one. If a unit with Frenzy or Impetuous has 2 moves, which one can you use to declare must declare a charge? You've got to use the higher one. If you can charge, you've got to charge. It's a thing. Can you become subject to Frenzy twice? No, you don't get like Berserker Frenzy and Frenzy. Can a unit with random movement move around or past an enemy unit into another one? This is what we had before. You can't loop around with squig hoppers, as I said. How far does a unit with random movement special rule move when giving ground? All units move 2 inches when giving ground. Yeah, it's just a flat one. Now, one thing that I think that crops up here with the drilled special rule change. Now, that refers to a move. Now, random movement is when you move a random amount. It needs more clarity maybe on when they are or aren't meaning what move. Like, I know this sort of comes down on the opposite side to how I came down on drilled previously, but with the expansion of drilled to mean literally any move, it maybe needs a bit more clarification. Because I mean, like, chariots with lumbering, where they get the 90-degree turn. I'm just trying to flick to the chariot bit while I talk. So when they get the 90-degree turn from lumbering after a move, so long as they've not marched, well, does that mean that they get to do their 90-degree turn after a follow-up pursuit move and things like that? Or literally any move? Yeah, it is. It's unless it charged, marched, or fled. So after I've given ground, or during a give ground, can I use my lumbering? Because this random movement it would suggest that you can use the lumbering rule along with the drilled rule. It sort of would suggest that you can use the lumbering because it's a move in the instances that you can use the drilled move, so long as you meet the criteria of not having marched, fled, or charged. So, yeah, it's just something to bear in mind it just popped into my head then, actually. So on to, can 2 regeneration saves be combined together to improve the armor value? No, armor values are given as a target number and cannot be combined to lower the target number. As with ward saves, only a single regen can be attempted and different regens cannot be combined together. It's a good change, basically, because High Elf Seeds of Regeneration are extremely common. I can take multiple, so then do I combine the 2 5s to make a 10, or do I take the 2 numbers off a 6, or then do I get a double regeneration? No, it's cleared up here, and I think we all knew it. That's the way it should be played, right? If a unit with stupidity fails a leadership test, how long is it stupid for? At the start of each turn until the next turn. Which way does a unit of skirmishers move? Basically, remember the direction that they went in a previous turn and move that far. If it didn't move in a previous turn, towards the nearest enemy unit. Swift Stride enables a model to move further during a charge than its maximum possible charge range. Why is this? Because models with a special rule delight in running down cowards who flee before a charge. Now, this is one of the things I actually love, how these FAQs are written. It's like got the passion of the rules writers in there, and yeah, you can just see that. So, like, with the support of multiple FAQs, that they love this shit, man. Right. Next, warband characters don't confer warband essentially to units they join, which we knew in the reverse, but it doesn't confer down or up either way. Some magic weapons or special rules allow specific models within the unit to be targeted. Do such attacks ignore the Lookout Sir special rule? No. So this will mean that Wood Elf Way Watchers don't ignore that Lookout Sir. So let's hope they fail that 2-up, right? A character mounted on a ridden monster or chariot can choose to use their own or their mount's armor value. If a character wears magical armor, but I choose to use a mount's armor save, can I claim the benefits of the magical armor? No, you've actually got to use that magical armor to get the benefits of the magical armor. There was a couple of magic item builds that tried to play into this, where you'd use a light or heavy armor with a great weapon, so you've only got a 6 or 5-up save, but still try and use the effects of the armor. No, if you want, like, say, the toughness benefits of a magical armor, you've got to use the actual magical armor for your armor save in that turn. So it's like a phase by phase choice, although it doesn't specify when you actually choose, right? If a character is mounted on a ridden monster or chariot carries a shield, do you improve the mount's armor value? No, you're separate, you work them out separately, and then choose which one you want to use, and then get on with the attacks. I suppose you choose it at the start of the combat, maybe, when you're choosing what weapon you're going to use. Do special rules conferred by a model's weapon apply to attack made by that model's mount? No. This can include, but is not limited to, rules unique to specific types of weapon. Special rules that apply to the weapon apply to a magic weapon. For example, a wizard is armed with a sword of swiftness, makes attacks with the strikes first. Basically, the next one is no assailment spells or attacks with weapons or anything benefit the model's mount. For example, a sword of swiftness doesn't confer strikes first. If a model with this special rule is unique to its faction that grants an additional special rules to a hand weapon, such as the chopper special rule, it only applies to actual hand weapons carried by the riders or crew, not to weapons belonging by mounts, draft animals, or counts as hand weapons. So choppers don't apply to your boars. Some models have weapons that state that they must make or choose to make one attack or one additional attack with the weapon. Can they make more than one attack with that? Like, so can they take their gaping maw from a dragon or a terrorgeist and make 2 attacks with it, 3 attacks with it to try and trigger that killing blow? No. Unless, if it's noted in the weapon's profile, may make a specific number of attacks with that weapon, normal attacks or otherwise, that's how many attacks can be made with this weapon. Can a model with 2 hand weapons choose to fight with just 1 hand weapon? You always have a hand weapon, essentially. The additional hand weapon is separate to that and is a completely separate weapon, almost in its own. There is hand weapon and additional hand weapon, according to this FAQ. Can a model use a lance? I've now been running down the new additions to the FAQ, but this sort of ties into one of the updated rules. So you can use a lance on any turn you've charged or counters charging, such as after a pursuit of a fallback in good order. Now, that ties into if a model loses, if my unit loses a round of combat, either gives ground or falls back in good order, can it choose to use a different weapon in the next turn? No. They're separated momentarily and remain locked in place and engaged in ongoing combat once the follow-up or pursuit moves have been made. Because combat's ongoing, neither unit is able to swap one weapon or the other. So because you count as charging, you'll continue to use your lance, is what that pink text further on is saying, because it's in a turn that you count as charging. However, say with flails, the fallback in good order doesn't trigger a new round of combat. That means that you get your +2 strength after each fallback in good order or pursuit. You've got the other blue text. If a wizard engaged in a challenge knows or uses an assailment spell that can hit multiple enemy models, are multiple enemy models hit? No, it can only hit the model in the challenge. That was why I was sort of skipping them out, is because there's like 2 that have been updated, so I thought I'd just cover them off at the end. Missile weapons can't be used in combat. Can a cannon be shot in ways as to hit enemy units that are engaged in combats with a friendly unit. So can you purposefully guess a number that will sail over your unit and hit an enemy unit? No. Page 143 makes it clear that except for in rare cases, you cannot shoot enemy units that are engaged in combat. It means that you cannot place the target point in a way to risk hitting the cannonball through a friendly unit or an enemy unit engaged in combat. Not a bad errata change, whatever you want to call it at this point. Can a war machine shoot using its ballistic skill of a character it is joined? No. War machine or crew is treated as a single model. You must use the crew's ballistic skill. So no dwarf engineers joining a ballista spear bolt thrower crew and using that. You've got points levels or the agreed upon points level, not what you actually get to. Does the allied contingent have to abide by restrictions given in army composition of the list it's drawn from? Yes, an allied contingent within a large army making a grand army or army of infantry composition. Within that 2,000, you have 500, and then you have to spend at least 125 on the core of the allied. That's just a bit of an FAQ, because that I think is in the main rulebook. Earth and ramparts doesn't stop you from declaring charges, it just prevents you from actually making the charge. So you'll declare the charge, be unable to do anything for the rest of the turn because you've declared it, or for the rest of the phase at least, because you've declared it, and it'll just be classed as a failed charge. Can a unit with the Earth and Ramparts cast make a counter charge? No, because a counter charge is a charge. Can Spectral Doppelganger be used from the Law of Illusion with a magic weapon that allows the wielder to make only a single attack? Looking at you, Empire, with the Strength 10 Mace of Hellstrom, I think it's called. No, weapons are limited to a single attack, only inflict a single hit. So I suppose you could use the Spectral Doppelganger to cast and use that Initiative 10, or that Strength 10, multiple wounds D6 to hit one massive time that auto hits because it's an assailment, but you won't get to do up to 12 hits with the Mace of Hellstrom. It's not brilliant, but you're at least still doubling the potential output of that mace, especially with the multiple wounds D6. Some models can be found in one faction's army list, but can be included as in others, such as Dragon Ogre Shaggoths, or in Beast Herds, as well as the Chaos Grand Army. What magic items do you have access to? This also comes up in Black Orc War Bosses, in Chaos Dwarfs, off the top of my head. Models can purchase magic items from the common list of magic items, or from their own faction's magic items. So a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth always uses the Beast Herds. A Black Orc Warboss in Chaos Dwarfs always uses the Orcs and Goblins magic items list. Which is what it is. It means no Hell's Heart, Black Heart, Warbosses for extra toughness. It's just a clarification of what was in there because it wasn't previously, and actually I think the easiest thing to assume was that you were taking magic items from the list your main detachment was, because that's where you were selected. But no, it's where your actual unit profile is found is going to be where we're using. Decent changes, the drilled is obviously the biggest one there, as well as having random movement following normal charge rules is positive change. Do like it. We'll get on to the Forces of Fantasy. So for the Forces of Fantasy, we've got this version of 1, so this is all new, right? That's why there's no magenta or blue, is what I'm assuming. We've got the steam cannon, does not have a 360 line of sight. It can only shoot in the steam tank's front arc. The steam cannon's hardly the most breakingly good piece of war gear. Bit weird. Laurels of Victory. Now this is a big one for the Empire faction. We've got Laurels of Victory don't count for the model's steed, essentially. It's only caused by the bearer of the laurels. So your Griffin killing things won't count for 2 combat res, and I know that was immediately one of the builds that was being taken by Empire players. A bit of a shame because Empire's on the weaker side of it, as it seems to be shaking out, but it seems also a change that was necessary and seemed weird that everyone cared about your Griffin's laurels. Wizard staff, 0 to 1 per wizard. You can't have like 4 wizard staffs a hand. Good change. Knightly virtues for Britonia to represent this. Some models may be given a knightly virtue. It does not affect the model's mount. So essentially you can't have a monster slaying mount. Cropping up again and again in this FAQ is affecting mounts. Lance formation with a unit strength of 5 or more may claim +1 to the combat res result rather than just having +1 all the time for being in lance formation. This is the same as the close order change and quite like it. Elven honours. Some characters may be given elven honours. Each honour gives the character certain benefits in the form of unique equipment. It doesn't affect the model's mount. Again, mounts. Right. Empire of Man. Are unsaved wounds caused by the model's mount done by Laurels of Victory? I swear we've just covered this. Yes, I suppose it's just doubled up that frequently asked question. Can a Bretonian army pray for the blessing of the lady if it includes an allied detachment? Yes, you can pray. However, an allied Bretonian detachment can only pray if it's an ally to another Bretonian detachment with the blessings of the lady special rule. How does a bolt thrower work when shooting at the lance? The number of models is based on the number of ranks overall. A lance of 6 knights, so 1, 2, 3, would suffer 3 hits. So you count that front, even though you're not measuring from the front singular model. If a character whose mount is on a different size base, the models in the unit wishes to join the unit, so say this will come up for Royal Hippogriffs or Royal Pegasus rather than just normal Pegasi. The lance offers a bit more flexibility than other formations. You can place the characters in the front of the lance. In the case of Handmaidens of the Lady, allows them to be placed in the rear of units. They can be placed within the unit. In this case, the extra base size would make very little difference to the shape of the unit. Place them where you want. Cool, well in favour of that. Not really a downside, especially when you can move characters so long as they're not already in the fighting rank around the unit anyway from the rear. It's fine as a change, just quality of life really that. When a unit is in lance formation is engaged in combat, every model on the outside counts as being in base contact. How many enemies count as being in base contact? The full fighting rank. So basically, rather than your lance spearheading into the enemy and only being in contact with one of them or 3 of them, I suppose is the maximum that one model at the front of the lance will actually be in base contact with. It works both ways and is an abstraction, as it says. Next, we have the Hawk-Eyed Archer special rule for Waystalkers. This is a really, really big change. Essentially, your Ruby Ring of Ruin can't be affected by your Hawk-Eyed Archer rule, so you can't pick out characters. It can only apply to the Asari Longbow. That is a massive change because that standard build, combined with characters in units getting their Lookout Sir even against these archers, it's basically going to limit the Waystalker to forcing characters into units rather than actually killing those characters. Obviously, you might be able to kill some Dwarf Slayers if you've got good enough rolling skills, but yeah, it's a big nerf for them, but I think it's a nerf that was needed rather than just machine gunning wizards off the board all the time. Can Wood Elf Realms army place an additional wood using the Woodland Ambush rule if it is included an allied detachment? If it includes an allied detachment. However, an allied detachment of Wood Elves can't place a wood. Fine. Bow of Lauren allows a Wood Elf character to make a number of shots equal to their attacks. How does this interact with enchanted arrows? When firing an enchanted arrow, it's assumed the model is only firing once. Therefore, the shots fired from the Bow of Lauren can be made from the enchanted arrows. The other shots are resolved using the ordinary arrows, non-enchanted arrows. So, like, say, Hail of Doom arrow doesn't stack with Bow of Lauren. Hail of Doom arrow still in there, right? High Elves. A wizard with Warden of Safri Elven Honour. Can they purchase magic armour? No, because I think they're given armour by the Warden of Safari rule, but they don't have it standard in the list. It's just a clarification. Next, we're going to get onto the Ravening Hordes. Now, Gigantic Spiders add move through cover to Gigantic Spiders special rules. Chaos Steed add countercharge to the Chaos Steed special rules. This is massive. Chaos Lords on Chaos Steeds now will be able to join units of Chosen Knights, and everyone now has countercharge rather than the Lord denying them. Massive in game terms, as well as it being really weird before that, like, your Lord goes up through all the ranks of the Chaos Warriors, goes through the Chosen, becomes a Lord, and loses the ability to be ferocious and charge back at the enemy. It's nice to see that addition. Nice to see that addition. A change in the base size of the Hell Cannon. Gifts of the gods to represent these strange abilities. Some characters may be given gifts of the gods. They don't affect the mount. Who knew? Who knew? Changing cost for the Badlands Ogre Bull to 7 points for the champion. It is what it is. Slaughterer's Call. Change the rule to becomes frenzied as a result of blood rage. Any unit that is joined will also become frenzied. So it's specifically due to the blood rage special rule rather than being able to take the Berserker Blade and become automatically frenzied and that's spreading. So that's a big change to the Beast Herds list there, because now you can't just take that Berserker Blade and all just be frenzied all the time. So Gifts of Chaos and Chaos Mutations, we'll do these at the same time to represent the strange attributes. Some models may be given gifts or Chaos Mutations. It doesn't affect the mount and can only be chosen once. It's another return to the mount special rule. And that wraps up the Ravening Hordes as well as the Forces of Fantasy. Hopefully you've enjoyed this very quick rundown. If you want to see tomorrow's video or re-listen to this one in audio format, there is a Patreon link below where you can guess podcast formats to a podcast stream, and that's just done through Patreon, as well as early access videos. We've got Richie's tournament report for his dwarfs, how he managed to come first at the Square Base GT, as well as Wood Elves Part 2 up there now, and there will be an Empire guide coming out shortly to Patreons and at some point in the future to everyone else. If you liked the video, don't forget to do all of the YouTube stuff. It really does help out because it means that I can see what everyone wants to watch, whether you want to watch this like quick fire review of the FAQ or whether it's not worth me doing until things have shaken out a bit further with it. Hopefully everyone's enjoyed those changes to the old world, not just the video. I know it made me happy that Drilled has been at least clarified for our ongoing enjoyment. And I'll catch everyone tomorrow. I'll see you in a bit.